Hey there, it's Tom Ryan, founder and CEO of ICR. Before we get into the next episode, I wanted to ask that you subscribe to the show. It'll help us get even more unique and interesting guests on the podcast and in turn continue to educate management teams and the growing ecosystem that creates value for fast-growing private and public companies. And while you're at it, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Very much appreciated.
I have a management philosophy that how you take care of your facilities is emblematic of how you take care of your team. So we are really investing there because people need the tools to do their job. They need to be able to take pride in where they work.
What does it take to modernize a legacy brand without losing the identity that attracted customers in the first place? By investing in what matters most of all to their stakeholders, any company can breathe new life into its business, learning from the past and strengthening for the future.
When people like their jobs, when they enjoy doing them, and frankly, the longer they stay in them, the better they usually are at them. So making jobs easier while improving quality is going to just pay a lot of dividends for us in the future. And I know that pays dividends to the guest experience as well.
Being a public company can be hard. Small missteps can have outsized consequences. I'm Tom Ryan, founder and CEO of ICR, and over the last 25 years, we've helped thousands of companies understand and navigate the stock market and the media. We'll demystify these and other increasingly complex stakeholder groups so you can focus on what you do best, building your company and unlocking your true potential. This is Welcome to the Arena from ICR. Revitalizing an iconic brand is no small task. It takes understanding the weight of tradition and balancing that tradition with the need to evolve in order to meet the changing expectations of customers and employees alike. Today's guest is no stranger to this kind of necessary transformation, demonstrating how thoughtful investment in people, spaces, and experiences can drive growth and long-term success. Today, we're sitting down with Julie Masino, President and CEO of Cracker Barrel, a role she took on just over a year ago in November of 23. Since then, she's led the company with a focus on innovation and growth, drawing on her over 30 years of experience in the restaurant and retail industries. Previously, Julie served as President of International at Taco Bell, and before that, President of North America. She's also held senior leadership positions at Sprinkles Cupcakes, Mattel, Starbucks, and began her career at iconic brands like Godiva, Coach, J.Crew, and Macy's. She clearly knows what she's dealing with when it comes to legacy brands and building them. Let's enter the arena with Julie Masino. I wanted to kind of go back to the Cracker Barrel opportunity and how that came to you. What did you see in the brand, after all your due diligence that attracted you to it and said, you know what, I'm going for this? What convinced you to take the job?
Honestly, Tom, it's the people. I saw such potential, from the very first time I went back to a Cracker Barrel. I hadn't been to one in a while. And when I went back in, I remembered all the things that make Cracker Barrel so great. My husband and I had such amazing hospitality, delicious food. I was like, there's something here. This is a great place where people connect. People were there with their families. They were there with their friends. And everybody I talked to in the journey, when I was evaluating the opportunity, everybody had such affinity for the brand. They loved the brand. Everybody has an origin story for Cracker Barrel, whether it was travel, soccer growing up, or baseball, or going to their grandma's house. Everybody has this origin story. And to me, the opportunity is, how do I get it out of people's rearview mirror? And how do I get it into their daily kind of relevant choice set, and make sure that it's something that really resonates with everybody of today and for tomorrow.
It really is iconic. And I know after you joined, there was a ton of work that you and the board and a lot of people did to kind of really figure out a path forward. On May 16th, you announced that the dividend was going to be cut, still paying a healthy dividend, but taking some of that capital and really investing it in a plan. And I know that's a 5-pillar transformation strategy. It's early days, but maybe walk us through the pillars, how they kind of work together to drive the transformation.
It's exciting, right? One of my tenets of leadership is that people have to know where they're going, right? Your job as a leader is really to provide clarity. And so when I got into the team, the mission for kind of how to take us forward, needed to be defined. And so we brought in some outside help, but we really spent probably the better part of 8-9 months talking to our guests, talking to our team members, deep in research, deep in data, our competitors, people that don't compete with us, looking at who was winning, who wasn't, and really what could be our way forward in this highly competitive, but really exciting space. And so we really came up with 3 imperatives from the early days, right? And that first one is really driving relevancy. And the way I tell people to think about that is it's market share, right? You want to be top of mind for people. You want to be in their consideration set. And how do I continue to just drive that? The second is this is a food and retail experiential business. So we have to have food and experiences that people love and that they crave and that they feel like really meet their needs. And so that was kind of imperative number 2. And then imperative 3 is, hey, we're a publicly traded company. It's our job to drive shareholder growth and create that long-term value. And so we had to grow profitability. We had lots of opportunity in that space. And so that was imperative number 3. So those 3 things really underscored this research that we undertook and all the conversations and months of data and man hours to come up with these 5 pillars. And they are, I think, you might say, gosh, they're not that revolutionary perhaps. But if you look at us or you look at other competitors out there, these are the things that you do. The real magic is doing them in a uniquely Cracker Barrel way and in a way that does resonate with our guests and drives our brand forward. And so pillar number 1 is about the brand, right? Making sure that we are communicating in a way that people want to hear us. They want to be a part of the journey, that we're matching messaging with channel, with audience, things that modern marketers do. Pillar number 2 is all about the menu. And it's not just about like what's on the menu. That, of course, is the first part of it. The second part is how do you merchandise it? How do you actually speak to people? What are those things? And then how do you make them in a way that's easier for your team? That work in the back of house, so many things are done by hand, processes, recipes that are decades old. How do we make it easier? How do we make it more enjoyable to work in the kitchen at Cracker Barrel, right? So that's a big part of that pillar. The third and final part of the pillar is because as we did all of this work, we found out that, gosh, unlike items that direct competitors have, whether that's, a stack of pancakes or country fried steak or, similar items, we were priced 8 to 12% below the competition, but yet none of our guests knew that or could recall that. They knew it was a fair price, but we weren't getting credit for how low we were priced. And so there was an opportunity to optimize that pricing. So pillar 2 has a lot going on. That's the menu pillar. Pillar 3 is really about the experience. So that encompasses everything from getting your food in a timely manner, your service standards, the skill level of our team members. All of those things roll up into how we execute in store. So the physical experience is in there. Retail, because at Cracker Barrel, many of your listeners may not know this, Tom, but we've got a $700 million retail business. And so that optimization of that business sits in this pillar as well. Pillar 4 is about digital and off-premise and making sure that we are winning in both of those 2 spaces. So very important to the guests of today, how they want to communicate with you, how they want to be marketed to, and frankly, how they live their lives. So think of probably everybody on this podcast has had delivery in the last 30 to 60 days. So it is a big part of making sure that we execute that business well. And then finally, the 5th pillar is about our team member and making sure that the team member, the manager, all of their experience with us is wonderful. How do we make Cracker Barrel the place where they want to build a career, where they can, just really feel fulfilled at the end of the day, and that a job well done for them enables them to take care of their families and do the things that they want to do in their lives. Those are the 5 pillars. Underneath them all are some tech enablers, cost saves, the ability to test and learn. But it's a nice tight framework lining up to driving us towards being a growth company for the future that drives shareholder value.
Yeah, well, it's 5 simple things, but doing them as you suggest is not so simple. It's complicated. It requires coordination and elite level execution. I know dinner's a key focus for Cracker Barrel, and that's an area that over the years has been a little bit of a challenge. Lots of competition, lots of different things coming out. Talk about kind of dinner, what that means for Cracker Barrel, and what initiatives are you kind of implementing to recapture some of that share during what's a crucial day part for y'all?
Early on, we identified dinner as an area where we could win more. We had lost significant share at dinner. Our research really uncovered that. And as you alluded to, specifically to a lot of our casual dining counterparts. And so, what I'm really proud of the team in the quarter that we just announced on December 4th, we shared that dinner traffic has improved 600 basis points Q1 over Q1, so year over year. And that was sequentially improving over the last 4 quarters and 200 basis points better than our Q4. So getting after that has been multifaceted. So back in February, we introduced something that I personally am really passionate about, which is Early Dine. Early Dine are dinner deals Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and they start at $8.99. So it is an affordable, really nice price point that works for anybody. And you get an abundance of food at that price point, again, during the week. And it's been nice to watch that continue to grow since we launched it in February. And then the other big piece, you talked about it earlier, but I'm an innovation girl. We had some gaps in the menu. And so really proud of the team here. Worked so hard and so fast to get a test stood up. It's the biggest test we've ever done on the menu in Cracker Barrel's history. It had over 20 items in it. We did that in 3 stores in Texas and really just listened to our guests, listened to our team members, and then fast-tracked some of those items into the fall menu. So they launched in August, and real proud of some of those items. Things like the hash brown casserole, shepherd's pie, and the pot roast are driving huge guest satisfaction numbers, huge kind of units per day numbers. So it's exciting for the team to see these items resonating with our guests. It's exciting for the guests to have something delicious and new on the Cracker Barrel menu that meets their needs at a great price point during the week. So really proud of what we're doing there.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have to walk a bit of a tightrope by not compromising the heritage of Cracker Barrel, but also being innovative. How do you think about that when you're in these tasting rooms and going through all of that? How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's the fun part of the journey. I mean, we spend a lot of time, again, talking to our guests, talking to consumers, research. We've got some great chefs on the team here. We work with some outside people as well, just watching what's going on in flavor trends, the way people are eating, what are the gaps we have on the menu, what actually used to sell well and isn't selling well now. But what we're really trying to do is make sure that we are being Cracker Barrel for today and for tomorrow. So how do we do things that are uniquely Cracker Barrel that, you've got to come to Cracker Barrel to get, that are delicious, they're handmade, they're home cooked, and they're just really playing our game our way, which I think is really, really important, knowing who we are as a brand and then the unique need that people have when they come to us and how we fulfill that in delicious and innovative ways.
You mentioned pricing earlier, and I think that is something that is incredibly interesting after doing all of the research, kind of seeing that you were priced below the market in some areas. But talk about the barbell pricing strategy, how you're maintaining that value perception while also positioning yourself for better profitability.
Yeah, it's so important and so tricky, but also just critical, right? I mean, I think consumers and our guests do it all day, every day. You do it. Like, think about your life. Anytime you're making a purchase decision, what's happening in your mind is it worth it? Is the dollar amount that they're asking for it gonna be worth it? Am I, and in a restaurant environment, is there gonna be enough food? What's the satiety level? Like, am I gonna like the way it tastes? Like, if you're dining with other people, are they gonna be happy? So you're taking all of that into account when you're really thinking through these things. And so backing up to that research that we did and talking to our guests and really listening to them, what they said to us is, price is important. Make no mistake, price is important, but it's not the most important thing when we're thinking about Cracker Barrel. You guys have fair prices, you have low prices, but we actually want the abundance that you guys deliver at Cracker Barrel. That's the most important thing. So as you think about pricing, make sure that my plate is full. And I always say it too, when I'm in the stores and I look around, so many people leave with to-go boxes, right? You're literally getting lunch or breakfast for the next day or something like that. So thinking about that as we both innovate and price is really, really important. The other thing that as we really just dug in both strategically and tactically and really trying to make pricing a data-driven exercise, we realized that over 60% of our stores were all in the same pricing tier, and it was the lowest tier. We had a store in Fredericksburg, Maryland, and a store in Mobile, Alabama. that were literally in that same tier, had the same pricing on all menu items. And you can imagine the cost of living in Fredericksburg, Maryland is really different than in Mobile, Alabama. The cost of, minimum wage in both of those places is really different. The cost of doing business in those locations is really different. And so really, we stepped back and used a couple of different filters around willingness to pay, cost of living, competition in those markets, all of those things to really resort the stores and re-architect the menu, making sure that we had those sharp price points like early dine, but then knowing, because abundance and home-cooked quality is the most important thing to our guests, how do we actually think about the upper end of that as well? How do we improve quality on a few things and take some price while we do that? So for example, we brought in a better quality steak product, and that's at the higher end of the spectrum. It's performing really, really well. It's the most expensive thing on the menu, but honestly, people are loving it, and because it's a better quality product. So the price is important, but it's still a very good price for that high quality product.
As we all know, food is very important, but in the restaurant industry, great service is just as critical. Julie understands the connection between happy team members and a great guest experience. That's why Cracker Barrel is focused on building a workplace environment where employees feel supported and proud to show up every single day.
I have a management philosophy that how you take care of your facilities is emblematic of how you take care of your team. And, we can do a better job there. It's an opportunity because we got behind during the pandemic with maintenance and parking lots and paint and things like that because of supply and demand during the pandemic and the whole nine yards. So we are really investing there because people need the tools to do their job. They need to be able to take pride in where they work. And that has probably been the thing that makes me the happiest about the stores that we're touching right now is going into them and hearing from the team members how much easier it is to do their job, how they feel invested and how they feel supported because we are fixing things that need to be fixed or just updating things and making it easier for them to do their job. So that's an exciting piece of this. But in the kind of months of work behind the transformation plan, we heard from guests gosh, we love the nostalgic feel of Cracker Barrel, but it really hasn't changed. And some of them are dark and it's hard to read the menu. And, how do we think about some of those things? So we've really just done some what I call no regrets moves. And we just literally lightened the paint color on the inside and the exterior to let people know that something new is happening. We updated the lighting fixtures so that they could be brighter in there. We actually streamlined the decor. Our decor is so important to our guests and to our team members. It's all real, authentic antiques. But what we did was we also heard from people that, hey, when I'm standing there and there's a two-person saw hanging over my head, I don't exactly feel
I'm a little nervous.
Comfortable. Yeah. So that's when I talk about streamlining decor, those are some of the things that we've done to really just make it feel more welcoming, more inviting. Most recently, we've tackled Indianapolis as a kind of test market for all of those changes. We remodeled 12 stores in the Indianapolis kind of DMA. The last one just went live right before Thanksgiving so that we could welcome everybody in for Thanksgiving. We've got some local marketing that's hitting and just really bringing that market to life. And then we're going to take the learnings from there. We've got some stores going in Florida. We've got some stores going in the Carolinas. So total of 50 to 60 touched stores this year, which we're really excited about. That's 10% of the fleet. So that's real exciting for us here at Cracker Barrel.
You talked about how some of the food has been prepared traditionally at Cracker Barrel and how you're looking to optimize back of the house operations. And I know that relates to the employee experience that we talked about already, but it also speaks to operational efficiency and quickness and quality and speed of service and all of that. Talk about the back of the house stuff you're doing, because I think that's really interesting for people who don't know the restaurant industry all that well.
Yeah. So this started in a couple of different ways. One, in the very early days of kind of sorting through how we were going to get back to growth, the team was measuring so many things. Our operations team especially is very metrics driven and very competitive. And so we were really digging into everything that they were measuring and everything that they looked at. And my God, it was honestly a little bit mind-boggling when you looked at all of it. And we said, what are the metrics that are most highly correlated with same-store sales growth? Let's figure out those. We came up with a list of 5 that really, really were the most highly correlated. And those have just been our rallying cry. One of those is what we call seat to eat. And that really is from the time you sit down at a table at Cracker Barrel to the time that your food hits the table, how long does that take? And people have been real programmed by QSR and their iPhones and just the world in general that things have to be faster than they used to be. And so I think our team was really surprised by how important that was to our guests and frankly, how much opportunity we had to do better at that. And so getting maniacal about seat to eat, in addition to a few other things like Google stars and skill level of server and grill cook and things like that, really led us to looking at the back of house processes and really asking ourselves, how do we make this easier? How do we make it more enjoyable? And ultimately, how can we get better quality food out to people faster? And so we hired an outside industrial engineering firm to really come in and help us look at the back of house, look at all the different processes. You know, they do these things called spaghetti maps and where do things overlap and where do steps cross and how do you save steps and what do those things look like? But they've broken it into 3 phases. The first phase is really just examining some of those cooking and processes. The kind of way that I explain this to the layman is I was giving a talk a couple weeks ago and I said, okay, how many of you out there in the audience go out and literally buy a head of lettuce or romaine and chop it up to make a salad these days, right, in your house? Like 2 people in an audience of 500 raise their hand. Most people buy bagged lettuce at the store. And guess what? Bagged lettuce tastes good. It tastes just like the lettuce when you cut it. And so those are some of the things where we hand cut everything, you know, at Cracker Barrel. So how do we do some things like bringing in product like that will make people's lives easier, jobs more enjoyable, and, you know, enable us to be faster? So just that's a real tangible example that I think the average person can understand when you think about how your grocery experience has evolved over the years and what that kind of looks like. So making jobs easier while improving quality is going to just pay a lot of dividends for us in the future. 3 phases there. First one is this year. Second phase will probably be next year. And then after that, really looking at equipment and what kind of changes do we need to make so they're a little further out in the process.
Yep. Just staying on employee experience just for a minute. In Q1, I know you had really strong improvement in retention metrics. You might as well mention that because it's extremely important.
You know, those metrics that matter, turnover is one of them, because when people like their jobs, when they enjoy doing them, and frankly, the longer they stay in them, the better they usually are at them. Plus, I want people to love working at Cracker Barrel. I really do. It's so important. When you love what you do, it really shows. So we've been real focused on this, focused on managers really owning their team development, really onboarding everybody, making sure that they're building the team that they want and the team that they need. And really pleased in Q1, our hourly turnover improved by 17 percentage points over the prior year. And it had already improved dramatically. So
it's like massive.
It's a real incredible number. I'm real proud of the team. Huge shout out to all of them and to all the leaders out there who are investing in their people and making their lives better every single day. So it's great to see. And I know that pays dividends to the guest experience as well. So
moving into another area of the restaurants, you know, digital off-premise, you did mention that in the beginning. That's had to evolve for all brands, certainly over the last 5 years. What success have you seen so far? And how are you thinking about that in terms of positioning those channels for future growth?
Let me break it into 2 parts. The first one is really our loyalty program. The second is the off-premise business. So let's start with the second, because that's probably people understand that a little bit more. But that's, you know, to go. It's also, we do large party catering. It's about 20% of the mix at Cracker Barrel. And what's so important about that business is it's hard for you to recover it when it's not right. Think about for yourself. If you've ordered food and by the time it gets to your door, especially if it's delivered through a third party, you're not going to go out and change it if something's missing or something's wrong, or the guest satisfaction at that point in time is so low and your likelihood to reorder goes down. And so it's so important that our accuracy is just constantly improving on our way to perfect in that channel. So that's actually one of the metrics that matter, making sure that our off-premise missing item rate is going down and improving. So lots of focus on that, focus on quality, just making sure that experience is just as great and our hospitality is extended to those guests just as much as if you were dining in store. So that's the second part of that pillar. The first part of that pillar for us is the loyalty program. And this is one that I get super excited about and passionate about because I know how great loyalty programs can be when they're engineered for your guest, when they speak to them and when they really amplify your brand in powerful ways. And what I think is so special about the Cracker Barrel loyalty program is that you can earn and redeem on both sides of the business. So restaurant and retail, you can buy things in retail, you can redeem those points in restaurant and vice versa. And our guests love that about the program. So we're a year in and we've already got over 6 million people signed up. They're coming more often, they're spending more money, and we're just really trying to understand how to fuel their desire to fuel the business, right? And so what does increased frequency look like? What does that look like across day parts, across the two sides of the business? I'm also a real data nut. So, there's a lot of data that comes from that program as well. And we can use that to really drive the business and learn more about our guests and what's important to them.
Yeah, I mean, look, you just casually said it's early days, but I mean, you're not even at the first inning with 6 million members, right? You're still in the batter's box, ready to go up to the plate. Talk about retail. You mentioned the scale of that business at 700 million. What did you learn from all the work that you did when you first joined Cracker Barrel? And what is your approach to retail kind of over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I actually think retail is a bit of a sleeper. I think it is so differentiated. There's something for everyone in there, whether it's a nostalgic candy or some new treasure or a gift that you need for someone or something for your home. I mean, there is literally something for everybody in there. The team does a great job really managing inventory to low levels, driving margin, and thinking about our guests. So I would tell you the early days of the transformation plan have been very, very focused on the restaurant side of the business, just because it's the bigger side of the business. We've got more employees over there, more profit sits over there, and really just returning us to growth has been focused over there. We've recently brought in some folks to help us look at our retail strategy, ways that we show up from a merchandising perspective, a layout perspective. We've also just embarked in our very first ever here at Cracker Barrel guest journey work, where you're really watching the guest journey and looking for the pain points and removing them and those points of friction and how do you eliminate those. So really it's early days on the retail side of the transformation, but gosh, I think there's just so much upside and so proud of how the team's tackling it.
Yeah, part of success there and obviously in the restaurant side is reaching your guests. And I know you probably have a lot of guests who've been with Cracker Barrel for a long time. Let's talk about younger consumers. You want to win with that demographic. I've seen some viral videos on some of the retail products, which is like really cool. How are you driving social engagement?
I talk about this a lot at Cracker Barrel. It's so important to us that we not only keep and love on the guests that we have today, because to your point, they've been with us and we have so many people who are just rabid Cracker Barrel fans. And so we want to make sure that they continue to love us into the future. But, we rely on real high volumes here. So we've got to make sure that the next generation and the generation after that really love Cracker Barrel too. And this really is a place for everyone. And so retail is a great vehicle for us to introduce people to the brand, to share some fun stuff. So we have these amazing, we call them tupers. They're like shirts that look like you're wearing a shirt underneath, and we did a whole series of those that were like hunting and fishing, and they blew up on TikTok. We literally sold out of them in like a week because a couple of girls had made a TikTok video of them wearing these things and going into Cracker Barrel and buying them. And so it's things like that that really allow us to connect across generations and make sure that we're relevant both on the restaurant side and on the retail side. I'm also super pumped that we've hired a new CMO. She is so talented. Her name's Sarah Moore. She comes from decades of hospitality experience, which is just so relevant to what we do here at Cracker Barrel. She's also a data nut, has got lots of experience with loyalty and really just driving guest behavior and making brands irresistible to people. And so I'm excited for her to work her magic with us here at Cracker Barrel. She's been a great addition to the leadership team.
That's amazing. Just one final question, Julie. And I think this is an important one because we've covered like everything. You are seeing tangible progress, which is great. You already talked about fiscal 25 being an investment year. What can people expect? Talk about kind of what your expectations are over the next 3 years.
Yeah, look, let's start with where we are to your point. We just announced this in May, and we just reported our first quarter under this plan last week in December. And couldn't be more proud of the team because literally we reported comp store sales of 2.9%, 290 basis points better than the casual dining index on Black Box. So really just so proud of the growth that the team is driving. And it's really about firing on all cylinders and making sure that we're taking care of those guests that are in front of us while setting up the company for success for the long term. It's a 3-year strategic plan. This is our big investment year, really setting that up. Back half of 26 is where we'll start to get into positive traffic and same-store sales growth will continue and EBITDA will start to tick up at that point in time. And then by the end of 27, we'll be back on a track to some really, really nice industry-level EBITDA growth. And it's not going to be quick. That's why it's a 3-year plan. But I think we've got all the right pieces and we're going to be agile and flexible as we move through it, be real responsible to our shareholders and using their capital wisely to drive long-term value creation.
Julie and her team have a transformative plan in place at Cracker Barrel, updating and upgrading every part of the business. They're refreshing their venues, improving the experience for their team members, and delivering value to guests, all with a forward-thinking plan for sustainable growth. This isn't just any turnaround, it's a blueprint for Cracker Barrel's future as a strong market competitor. By embracing change while staying true to their roots, they're proving that legacy brands can innovate without sacrificing the unique qualities their customers expect. At Welcome to the Arena from ICR, we're working really hard to bring you exciting guests and great content. If you found this episode insightful, please subscribe to the show on your podcast app and leave us a 5-star rating. The more the show grows, the more interesting voices we can have on the podcast, and in turn, that should demystify a lot of the stakeholders around public companies and soon-to-be public companies. Thank you so much for listening. A big thanks to Julie Masino for joining me on the show today. Under her leadership, Cracker Barrel is quickly becoming a stellar example of what's possible when heritage brands blend innovation with tradition, maintaining their success from one generation to the next. This is Tom Ryan. We'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.